Hello there, I am Chemic Trash, and as the title alludes, we're going to be talking about what's going on with Jimmy Snow, and we're going to start with the Gabbie Hana, Rachel Oates, and Jimmy Snow situation, focusing primarily on the things that happened in the run-up to it, and then also the things that happened and the fallout from it. But this will mostly just be talking about the immediate fallout and not the things that have happened more recently. I do plan to get to those. A little update right now before we get into everything else, because this just happened today. Jimmy Snow's put out a statement about the Gabbie Hana situation. His quote is, "I'm withdrawing myself from Gabbie Hana's life. There is no tea video coming. I've just learned a lot and reflected on a lot, especially in therapy, and I just can't be a part of this, even as just a sideline friend who only hoped she'd get better and gave her the benefit of the doubt. I hope she has positive people in her life that can help her, but at this point I can't be one of those people. This whole situation makes me sick, and while I know curiosity must be high, I'd like to not talk about it further for now." So firstly, I'm going to have to say, this whole "I'd like to not talk about it" thing, he keeps saying this every single time he puts out a statement, and I'm sorry, but when you put out a public statement, people are going to continue to talk about it, even if you don't want to. People are going to question you about it, even if you don't want to. You've taken this topic publicly. That's just kind of what happens. Secondly, the issue was never you being friends with her, it was the whole, you being friends with her and denying the things that she had done by saying that much of the things people say about her is bullshit. And this is also, I bring this problem up later, but Gabbie Hana hasn't gotten a video, a long tweet, anything treating her anywhere near how Rachel was treated by him. Nowhere near. And that continues now. She just gets a slap in the wrist and told that he hopes she gets better. And I don't understand this difference between the two. Maybe it's my neurodivergency speaking, but I just can't understand why one is being treated in a certain way and the other is being treated in another way. I think what Gabbie did is much worse than ever misrepresenting someone in his opinion, or going in an interview about it, or not trusting him immediately. Everything Gabbie's done has hurt people much more than he's been hurt by Rachel. It's not an Olympics, it's not who's the worst, but the things that Gabbie has hurt people with are way more serious than what Rachel's ever hurt anyone with. And that's kind of the biggest issue over all of this, and I hope that comes through clear enough. I also have to say, in the immortal words of JoJo, it's just too little too late. Anyway, let's get back on topic. Don't contact anyone here as a way to get back at them or attack them, harass them. Just don't. Nobody wants you to do that. No one likes you doing that. We are here to talk about situation. We are not 17-year-olds playing pranks on the people we dislike. Just don't. Okay? Okay. Let's move into the video. I know this isn't the only thing that Jimmy's done that's upset people. It's just the thing that made me find out what was going on and what upsetting behaviour he had been participating in. It as well made me realise that some of the red flags that I'd been ignoring actually were red flags. I had just been hoping they weren't. And it all started with a video called Gabbie Hana, Rachel Oates and me on the Jimmy Snow channel. We will have mild discussion of SA as well as accusations of CSA, and most likely discussions of the R word and the R word used to describe people who perform that act. There will also be mentions of, let's just say, I hate that YouTube doesn't let you just say the word abuse, because it's so hard to talk about serious issues without being able to do that. Rachel was, by Jimmy's own description, a close friend.
Much closer friends than Gabbie and I. Rachel and I were very close. We were, I think, a part of each other's support system.
You may also know her as being a YouTuber in her own rights. She makes videos on a wide array of topic and styles, but many of her most popular works are her poetry and literature reviews. One of these reviews happened to be on a book called Adolescence by yet another YouTuber, Gabbie Hana. I feel like most of us will have heard, read, said, or written this name many times by now, so I'll try and keep it short as possible. Another person Jimmy described as a friend, but not a close friend. Gabbie Hana, the Viner who came across to YouTube when Vine died. Also started a music career, published several music videos, and a couple of poetry books. Personally, I am not into her poetry. I kept expecting wetter introspection, but it felt like kind of thing you'd write on a sticky note and then stick it to a board and never look at it again. Rachel was able to be a lot more constructive than I can be on the subject as someone who doesn't really know poetry. She released a video on the 13th of December 2019 titled "Gabbie Hana's Poetry is Bad," discussing the aforementioned adolescence. During a long form reviews, Rachel joked that her dog Kyra could write better poetry, and later even released a parody of adult lessons called Dogolessons on the 9th of February 2020. The profits from this book went to a well-known and well-loved rescue in the UK where Kyra was originally adopted from.
First impression of Gabbie's poetry was that it's all quite shallow. It's very much what you see is what you get. There's nothing really under the surface. You know, having a very clear, simple communication style where there's nothing hidden, just being very open, can be a wonderful thing, especially in certain novels, or when you're writing non-fiction, or when you're speaking in a YouTube video, for example. But when it comes to poetry, I feel like just having this very surface-level meaning kind of defeats the point of poetry altogether.
So while she clearly wasn't taking away passion for this work, she was fair in her critiques, and it felt much more serious and respectful than some of the later videos on this topic. Like, there's no hate towards those creators, it's just that they didn't handle it with the same level of care that Rachel did. On the 23rd of February 2020, we see Gabbie reach out to Jimmy. The way he responds doesn't scream that he had spoken to her in any depth before now. This was also an interaction followed by him mentioning Gabbie in a public light in a May 23rd, 2020 video on the changing of his channel name.
Now, this isn't going to solve that perfectly. There are people that people are just obsessed with hating. One of them is my friend. And I know I'm going to get messages for saying this out loud and admitting it, but Gabbie Hana and I are friends. She is really kind to me and really supportive, and I have seen the obsession that people have with hating her, despite the fact that she tries to humanize herself by using her own name.
Jimmy responded extremely poorly to a fan comment discussing how Gabbie made them uncomfortable by giving an extremely poorly worded response. Censored user, timestamps 1427. It's not that people are obsessed with hating Gabbie Hana, it's calling her out for the hurtful things she's done to others, defending our words and calling the victim a liar, talking about someone else's mental health in a negative way, spreading rumours of other people plus more, and there's evidence of all of that. It's disheartening that someone like you would just ignore that, but each to their own, I guess. I have seen both sides of the evidence, and you are wrong about who she has supposedly defended. She has proven this, but people don't care, because it isn't as exciting. The user responds with, "I stand by 100% of what I said. Telling a victim they wasn't R-worded is never okay. Her quote-unquote apology was anything but that. Agree to disagree. I do not believe he meant it like this, but the wording here implies people are wrong about the person that Gabbie defended, and that Gabbie had proven that. Not that the person was wrong whether or not Gabbie had defended Curtis Shitstain." I had to read this multiple times and ask others if I was being crazy for reading this wrong. The phrase, "you are wrong about who she supposedly defended," sounds a lot more like you're wrong about who the person who is accused of our word, rather than whether or not Gabbie defended them. As I say, I do not believe that was an intention, but that's how it came across in reading it. So that was about a year ago, and then there isn't any large updates until about the 26th of October. Rachel Oates completed and uploaded a review of Gabbie Hana's latest poetry book, Dandelion, which Gabbie herself sent to Rachel Oates with quite a nice message. Jimmy has later said that the tweets in the run-up to the review were needlessly mean, and so that's what he was talking about.
But I was reacting to these tweets that were not constructive criticism, that were nasty tweets to make. And if Rachel and I were talking about this in private, I would say those aren't useful. And unfortunately, the thing that I have seen, so this is one of the ones I don't have the receipts for, because I think it was a story or a tweet or something that is gone, but I recall seeing her defense of using those kinds of comments as this is what you do to promote a video. That is not a good excuse.
This is extremely strange for Jimmy to be complaining about, when he said something almost the same about Girl Defined.
Hey gang, do I look like I've lost some weight? Well, let me tell you my secret. Earlier this week, I was introduced to this channel, Girl Defined, and I just straight up still have diarrhea.
Jimmy has since gone away from saying these kind of things, but it doesn't sound like he went away from it because, one of Girl Defined's friends came and discussed with him how he was harming them. Rachel's Twitter is gone. We do only have the stories, but apparently they were just cross-posted, so they're above for you. Honestly, none of these come across to me as even as bad as some of the things Jimmy has said about writers and creators on his own channel.
Good poetry and bad poetry makes me sad. But I just thought, so I'm not the only one for like recording and posting Instagram videos, but today's just one day, and I'm exhausted, and you have to speak for real at bed. I'm going to take my makeup after filming, so I'm going to go and do that. Anyway, not even the point. I have just finished recording my video on Gabbie Hana's poetry book, Dandelion. I feel like my brain is melting. That's where I'm at right now. I had such high hopes for, not even for the book in terms of poetry standards, but I had such high hopes for Gabbie learning and improving and getting better. And I'm just so disappointed, and it's really like, genuinely upsetting, because you know I love poetry, and I love good poetry, and bad poetry makes me sad. But I just thought everything. I thought Gabbie was going to learn, and she was going to improve, and she was going to at least take on board some of our critiques and some of our suggestions. And she's just not. It's almost as though she's done the exact opposite, and that's a little bit heartbreaking. But yeah, you'll have to kind of wait until I edit it and post the video tomorrow for you to see what I mean. It's a long video, I think. It feels long anyway. But I think it's going to be a good one, and it's hopefully going to be informative. But there's still a lot I want to talk about. Like, there was one poem in the book that I actually thought was good by Gabbie's standards, and I didn't even get a chance to properly analyse or talk about that. So I think that's probably going to be a second part where I do that, or maybe I can do it as a short Instagram video, I don't know. But I don't know, I kind of want to keep you guys up to date on where I am with this video, because it's one that I put a lot of work into, and a lot of you have been asking for months now, like even before the book came out. So it's one that I'm very, very excited to share with you, but at the same time it's been stressful as well, because Gabbie sent me this book, and she specifically said she wanted it to be in the hands of people who love poetry, and I was kind of worried going in, because I thought the book was going to be better than the last one. I thought it would be an improvement, and I thought I would have a lot of positives to say, and I was actually worried that people were going to think I was kind of almost selling out if I praised the book, or like that I've been bought by her, because, you know, she'd sent me this book for free and she'd asked me to review it, and I think people would think I was going too easy on her because of that. But after reading the book and making this video, now I'm a bit worried that Gabbie's going to think I'm like a backstabbing bitch because she's nice enough to send me her book and I just ripped it to shreds. But I spoke to a lot of friends about this, and every single one of them was like, you just have to review the book as you would any other book. And I'm like, yeah, of course that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I have done. I just want to be honest. And if the book was good, I was going to say it was good. But it's so bad. I don't know. I guess I feel bad for saying it's bad. But then if it wasn't bad, I don't like this. I just want to talk about poetry. I don't get into all politics. I don't get into all politics of who wrote it and crap like that. Ugh. Okay, it's late and my brain's turning mushy, and I'm going to go to bed now and edit in the morning and clean my face and put on my pickle. Okay.
Jimmy decided he had to deal with the situation. And how did he choose to do so? Did he try to be an actual mediator to help these women get to the source of their problems by letting each of them speak, but also not allowing either of the participants to interrupt one another? Now, he went to Rachel and sent her this message. Hi! So I have no expectations, but I thought you'd want to know. While I don't think that Gabbie watches the videos themselves, I know that the reactions people have to your videos about her poetry definitely hits her feelings. I'm not saying do or don't make the video, but I thought you'd want to know that the human on the other side of it definitely experiences severe negativity because of it. She hasn't asked me to say this to you, by the way. She told me another one is coming, and it was obvious to me that she's messed up in anticipation. After this, Jimmy and Rachel have a little bit of a back and forth. Eventually things kind of climax in Rachel blocking Jimmy on Facebook Messenger. I am going to start right here. Rachel made a mistake and she posted online her responses to Jimmy. I don't think it's a horrific mistake, but Rachel also does agree that it's a mistake. She says she regrets it and she's apologised. She's deleted them. But she's also explained she didn't really know what else she could do at the time, for reasons explained soon. She posted the messages she sent in response to Jimmy, but not his, and never mentioning it was him. No one had any clue who it was, until Jimmy decided to out himself as this and post his own message. He stated it started because he felt Rachel was putting out a false narrative, whilst saying she felt kind of upset and manipulated. And Jimmy did not know about this. He had zero awareness, by Rachel's own words. It was just a really hard time for her mentally, and her judgment wasn't where it would be if she wasn't going through such experiences. She does talk about these experiences in her videos, especially her more recent ones. So if you want to hear how Rachel feels about this, I think that's the better place for you to go than me to read it out here. Another contextual issue is that Jimmy admits in his June 16th video that he has never read Gabbie Hana's poetry or watched Rachel Oates' videos on said poetry. He hadn't even realised that when he messaged her, Rachel's review had been out. He mentions that Rachel should consider the other person on the other side of her videos when she makes her videos. In his first message, he mentions videos 3 times. He's later claimed that this is about tweets, but he mentions tweets 0 times. That Gabbie Hana was messed up in anticipation because she knew another review was coming. He thinks because she didn't directly tell him to do this, that this couldn't possibly be what she wanted him to do. But Gabbie is displaying similar behaviours in another situation, but just much more aggressively. And that's because it was towards the victim of her ongoing harassment, Jessi Smiles. In Jessi Smiles' video, she discusses the fact that Gabbie blackmailed Jessi with a podcast exposing Jessi if she didn't tell her acquaintance, Jendent, to stop tweeting about Gabbie Hana. Jendent was tweeting because Gabbie had falsely accused her of CSA against a little girl because a random dude on the internet had claimed Jendent had done so. This inevitably caused issues between them. Anyway, back to the Rachel part. Gabbie Hana does an interview with BuzzFeed which contains her calling Rachel Oates a bitch. Following this, on the 7th of June 2021, Rachel appeared on a BWC2 video called Gabbie Hana's Damage, Rachel Oates exclusive interview. This interview features her discussing her feelings on the situation.
But then he basically he sent me this message, and like all the screenshots and stuff are out there, like for people to go and see if they want. But basically I felt a little bit manipulated because he said that Gabbie had gone to him and was like really upset that I was going to be making another video about her book. And I was like, but she asked me to. Like, and I didn't understand it. And there was like a whole thing. And I think there was just like misunderstanding and miscommunication on like lots of sides. But basically, like, I ended up asking on Twitter, just like keeping him anonymous. I was like, am I at fault here? Am I misunderstanding this? Like, what's happening?
Regardless, this was a source of a lot of the troubles in the situation for Jimmy. And it's kind of understandable when you rewatch this response. A big part of the issue is his motivations for doing the video, which I will just let him tell you himself here.
The few reasons why I resent this. First of all, the reason why I'm addressing it is now because of misinformation that is out there about my involvement. The channel's suffering, and this is my job, and I have employees, and it matters to me. And so, yeah, a lot of my motivation to answer is because of how it is affecting my life and the lives of the people who work for me.
This point is brought up kind of often in the future as well by him, how it's affecting his business, how he has people that he employs. I've got to tell you, Jimmy, you shouldn't have this as your business when you don't even have 500,000 subscribers. That's not me shaming you, that's not me saying you're irrelevant. You're relevant, you're completely relevant in your niche, but like, literally, you did not have a platform big enough to even just hire yourself. And you hired other people? You didn't have the money behind you to make sure they were getting paid, even if you couldn't pay, like, didn't make money on YouTube in that month. But it's our fault that those people might not be getting paid. Businesses like yours should be responsible for their employees and at least be able to pay them for a couple of months if things go a bit rocky. I don't know why you started a business without having the means, the finances, or the stability to really justify it. Jimmy refers to him being friends with Gabbie as being the controversy.
I guess let me start off by telling you my relationship with the two people. Yes, it is true, the controversy. Gabbie Hana and I are friends.
She was you picking to go after Rachel because Gabbie had told you something, and then apparently basically just tell Gabbie you didn't like her saying certain sex-based slurs and misinform people about what you said. This man made an hour-long video talking about how Rachel misquoted him and barely even mentioned these heinous quotes from Gabbie Hana.
Trying to deny the reason she deleted Twitter, so I actually want to let you know what happened. So we have a mutual friend who messaged her outside of me. I literally did not talk to him at all.
Here we have the first example of Gabbie completely misquoting Jimmy Snow. Somehow they didn't talk, and yet Jimmy says this.
She hasn't asked me to say this to you, by the way. She told me another one is coming, and it's obvious to me that she's messed up with anticipation.
I literally did not talk to him at all.
She told me another one is coming. And
make it make sense.
When the first time her friend, I literally did not talk to him at all. Behavior. She blamed me, the permanent scapegoat of the fucking internet, and then stopped talking to her friend.
Regardless of whether or not Rachel's tried to speak to him since then, Jimmy blocked Rachel, and he has said that himself. Instead of actually addressing this, he decides to go on about messages that were sent to Rachel, because apparently not all the messages are out there, like Rachel said.
And so the thing I was going to say that is weird to me is that you see these circled check marks like she didn't read them. The thing is that I know she did, so something happened when I blocked her.
Rachel did not see these messages. He doesn't have any evidence to prove that she did, other than his own word. And his own screenshots and Rachel's screenshots both consistently show these messages were undelivered. He claims he blocked her because she saw the undelivered messenger messages and ignored them. Rachel Oates provided a video proving her messenger never received these and there were no messages deleted. Still, he claims that he blocks her everywhere because of this. Rachel Oates wakes up to this the next day. I understand this is a little bit confusing, the timeline is all over the place, but that's because there's just so much context to these things. The next part we're going to go on to is another part that people found kind of questionable in Jimmy's statements.
When Gabbie first was acknowledging she liked my content, people were telling her to stay away from me, like, stay away from him, you don't need to ruin him too. And I was literally sitting there going like, if you think she's so bad, and you know what my content's about, shouldn't you root for my existence to make her better?
I wonder when he's going to start applying this to like the people who he spends a lot of time talking negatively about, who at one point were actually a smaller platform than him until he started talking about them. He admits this himself. But you know, you'd think he wouldn't maybe give a go at trying to befriend Girl Defined instead of spreading kind of dangerous rumours about a man, because, you know, people in that community, as he knows, are not very accepting of even stuff like that. I'm particularly annoyed about that one because I actually believed it was true because Jimmy was saying it, and I know that's a stupid thing to do. I might be, but you know, I just kind of felt like someone who did all this talk must have backed up with all this research. It's a charming persona, and for a while it works, but eventually you're going to see something that breaks you out of the persona Jimmy Snow tries to show. My point here is just that he has very strange standards on who is and isn't going too far. You know, Gabbie has like an audience of 5.5 million and is still harassing a woman who's currently pregnant about her R word from years ago. For real. Also, am I the only one who's really curious if Gabbie could name like a few videos by Jimmy that don't mention her that she enjoys? Because like, she's acknowledging him. And like, what was she acknowledging him for? She didn't specify anything, and wow, that date. It makes me put on a tiny tinfoil hat and say, the date Gabbie contacted Jimmy was oddly close to the release of Dogolescence. This is probably nothing, but you know, it's sometimes good to keep an eye on people's behaviour. Another big complaint is Jimmy here quoting that he didn't look into any of this whatsoever. He didn't even read Gabbie Hana's poetry.
But there's something I want to point out in here. So I was reacting not to the review itself, though I knew the review was coming. I had never, ever seen a single Rachel review or I have never in my adult life read a poetry book. I don't care about poetry. Gabbie Hana, as a friend, sent me a poetry book, and I literally told her like, hey, well, I asked, did you send me a poetry book? She goes, yeah, tell me what you think about it. And I was like, I feel so awkward because I feel like I need to tell you I will do that, but I'm not going to because I don't care about poetry. I'm not going to read this.
A man who complains constantly about people misinterpreting him, literally misinterpreting the whole situation because he is willingly ignoring context whilst telling everyone else they don't have context, it brushes people the wrong way.
However, I have now just seen another example of her using what just seems like overly negative language.
Oh my gosh, she said that Gabbie Hana had overpriced and poorly made poetry. That is such negative language. But I mean, so is this thing right here.
I know that if I did anything like this, I would be called manipulative, sociopathic, narcissistic, attention hungry, money hungry, but that is what you are. You're a fucking monster. You're a bitch. What is it, you manipulative, narcissistic bitch? You fucking weird ass bitch. You're a manipulative bitch. You fucking sick, twisted bitch.
Well, Jimmy has vaguely gone over it. My issue here is not that he's never addressed it. The fact that Rachel got an hour-long video and Gabbie Hana got so much defense when Gabbie Hana was acting completely out of line. Like, absolutely disgustingly to Rachel. A big part of this, well, is him claiming lies or false narratives, but the scenario is really just a disagreement on how each person interprets the situation. Gabbie, in Rachel's opinion, seemed manipulative in her behaviour. Jimmy also did to a certain degree. No matter what he says, he was hoping to impact how Rachel looked at Gabbie, which would impact how Rachel talked about Gabbie. He wanted to train her into the right way of talking about Gabbie Hana, in his opinion. But he did nothing about that when Gabbie Hana was literally calling Rachel all those things we just saw. He did zilch. To Towards the end of the video, where he's admitted he didn't watch any context, he talks about people are going to add context. Because you completely ignored it, Jimmy. The situation has context. Oh my god. Shocking.
That's, again, me just anticipating stupid criticisms people are going to make because they're like, oh, I'm adding a bunch of context.
When the context is years of repeated behaviour where she harasses multiple people, constantly adding more, maybe you should be looking at that context. Maybe you shouldn't just hide it because you've heard people are mean to Gabbie and Gabbie's told you it affects her emotionally. No one's saying that you could have been manipulated by Gabbie thinks that you were manipulated because you're stupid. You're not a stupid person. Literally, emotional manipulation plays on your emotions to manipulate you, and people are able to do that even if you don't think they are. So that's pretty much the video. The fallout video was a little bit messier, for sure. Rachel Oates makes a response to this, which is very long, and I feel like you'd be better just reading in her words, so I'm going to quickly show it above, but it'll also be linked down below. A screenshot of the whole thing so you could read it easily. It's also still available on her YouTube. Rachel pretty much goes over the whole situation, explains it from her point of view, and about some of the claims that came out in Jimmy's video. Then we get to the rest of the fallout, which kind of starts because of Jimmy's attitude. So let's get into this little last part, essentially. Following Jimmy Snow publicly supporting Gabbie Hana in the Rachel Oates situations, as well as his pretty much unquestioning support of her before now, his video leads to responses from fans on his video for it, and he turns off comments, so many of these people go to Reddit or Twitter, etc. to do so. But yeah, there's a lot of questionable behaviour here. And yet with all this blocking and silencing, a lot of people needed to find a voice and somewhere to talk. This is also going to be a topic I'll go into a little bit in another video, but there was a subreddit made about Jimmy for people who'd been blocked or banned, or people who were just uncomfortable with his current behaviour. And that kind of started cataloguing and going through a lot of things. Again, Jimmy doesn't really react well to this, and some other people don't either, to the point where it gets labelled a hate group. You know, that term that already has a meaning, that term that's applied to those guys with their big ass white peaked hats or whatever those things are. I don't know, I don't want to know anything about that group, but that group, who I won't even frickin' name, they are a hate group. A subreddit being critical of Jimmy Snow is not a hate group. His extremely defensive actions only seem to lead to even more people unsubscribing, and that has continued to this day. He is currently at 379,000 subscribers, but he was over 400,000 beforehand. This is sadly undone the progress that he's made this year. So yeah, that's kind of the wrap up I need to get to here. Jimmy decided to question Rachel's behaviour on her responses to Gabbie Hana's poetry, acknowledges that he didn't really view any of the context of this multiple times, and complains about himself being misrepresented when he repeatedly misrepresents Rachel's intentions with her videos, and even just if she has the ability to empathise properly, which is very condescending, and I don't know how he didn't see that before he sent the message. It's the most condescending way you could go about that. It's like, I don't know if you know, but this other person has feelings, is how you talk to a 4-year-old, not, you know, a fully grown woman who's meant to be one of your closest friends. And the fact that he's just refused to apologise. I know he made another video called I Myself Will Apologise to Rachel, and so that's why, in my opinion, Rachel's side is hopefully closed, and hopefully Gabbie will leave Rachel alone. But the Jimmy side keeps going, because by bringing this big spotlight to his behaviour, Jimmy accidentally started a motion that discovered more of his misdeeds. One of those includes exploiting his fans. I may do a video on this topic if you guys are interested, but there are other videos that I will try and link below, and make sure you guys can get that info easily, and just try to keep this just under half an hour. If you guys have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the description down below. Feel free to like, feel free to subscribe. At the time of uploading this, I think I have 33 subscribers, so you'd be welcome to a very, very exclusive club. I hope you guys have a good day regardless of what we've all just seen. Take care. Bye.